Hello, and thank you for listening to the NYCEFT Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Fine, certified emotionally focused therapist, supervisor candidate, and director of public outreach on the NYCEFT board. Whether you're a professional looking to deepen your knowledge of emotionally focused therapy, in a relationship and want to strengthen and repair your bond with your partner, or just want to stay connected with what's happening in the NYCEFT community, there'll be something of interest to you in this podcast. I'm really excited to share with you my conversations with guests that include EFT trainers and supervisors and other professionals from around the world. So be ready to learn something new. Hello and welcome to the NYCEFT Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Fine, certified emotionally focused therapist, supervisor candidate, and Director of Public Outreach on the board of NYCEFT. And I'm so happy to be here today with our guest, Peggy Wu. Peggy is going to be talking with us and sharing her wisdom and her insights about the dramatic rise in violence and hatred directed at the Asian American community here in the United States and the Pacific Islander community here in the United States. And Peggy, we're so happy to have you here. I'm so happy to have you here. You and I have known each other for quite a number of years now. And we first met when I was at the externship, I think about 6 years ago or so, my first foray into emotionally focused therapy. And you were just such a calm, soothing presence for me there. And it's been so nice to know you for all these years. And I just want to give you an opportunity just to introduce yourself, share a bit about your professional credentials, and anything else you'd like listeners to know about you and your background.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you so much for having me and really giving me the space to discuss something that I think is, very important, very personal to me at heart. I am Peggy Wu. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice in New York City, as well as an adjunct professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. I am a certified EFT therapist and supervisor candidate, and currently I'm on the board of New York Center for Emotionally Focused Therapy as the director of graduate student outreach, where my hope is to be able to bring some of this EFT material to the graduate students. I'm also a mother of 2 boys, a wife to my loving husband, and a Chinese American. And most recently, I had received my PhD in transpersonal psychology last year, which was very exciting.
Yay, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I was born in Taiwan and immigrated to the US when I was about 9 years old. So I speak both English and Mandarin fluently. I think, given what's been happening in recent times, especially since the Atlanta shooting, I'm seeing an influx of Asian clients, both, as couples, perhaps couples where both people are Asians, or even in mixed race couple, where people are having some feelings about what's been going on. And I'm also experiencing an influx of individual clients who are Asians, really trying to deal with, a really mix of emotions that they're holding. So again, I really appreciate you, Jeff, for giving me the space and inviting me today to discuss this recent rise in anti-Asian hate and violence, and really what we can do about what's been going on.
Yeah, thank you for that, Peggy. What an impressive list of credentials. We're lucky to have you here. So let's dig into this very important and challenging topic. As we get started here, when we're talking about the hate and violence directed towards Asians, the Asian community, who are we really talking about? When we say Asians, that can mean lots of things, right? So I thought, why don't we just start by clarifying that?
Yes. So, Asian is not a monolith, right? In the continent of Asia, there are, over 40 countries. And they're broken into different parts of Asia. But given, in recent, like what's been happening when we talk about the anti-Asian crimes, attack sentiments, they tend to be targeted towards East Asian, which are the countries such as China, Japan, Korea, and also Southeast Asian, which includes Cambodians, Indonesians, Filipinos, Malaysians, Singaporeans, Vietnamese. I mean, there are more countries that that fall into these categories, right? And certainly, some also South Asians, right? People from Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka. So, I mean, certainly, many of these countries, I would say almost all these countries have experienced some form of racism one way or the other. But there's also, Central Asia and West Asia, but in light of the topic that we're talking about when we talk about hate, tend to be geared towards the East Asians and Southeast Asians
Here in this country. Yeah.
in this country.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And of course, hate and violence and racism doesn't discriminate, but I just thought we could get a little clarity on that. Yeah. And so, what
Yeah, actually, I'm sorry, I meant to add, right? Because people talk about Asians, but it's also, often the term that we hear is actually AAPI, which includes the Pacific Islanders. I
right.
just wanted to include that as well. It's Asian, and not just Asians, but Pacific Islanders as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that, right? We don't want to forget anybody here. Yeah. So what are some of the most urgent concerns now, in light of what we're talking about? There's been a dramatic rise in the last year and a half of hate and violence directed at Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders here in this country, in part as a result of, these misinformation about the cause of COVID. And while Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are they're no strangers to hate and racism, there's been a dramatic rise in the last year and a half. So what would be some of the most urgent concerns of this community today?
Yeah. So I think some of the more urgent concerns for the Asian community is really the rise in anti-Asian attacks and sentiments. Because people are not feeling safe. People in the Asian community, they're not feeling safe about either going out. There's a lot of fears about, getting attacked on the streets or, their family members going out, and especially the elderly. There's a lot of fears about elderly and children going out and getting attacked. So that's, this, it leads to a lot of anxiety and depression in people. I'm seeing really an increase in clients coming in, Asian clients coming in with a heightened sense of anxiety and depression, because there's a sense of, a powerlessness to, for us to be able to do anything about that. At least that's what it feels like, right? So I think one of the most urgent concern is for the safety of, Asian Americans, their own safety, as well as those of their family, friends.
Yeah, and you mentioned families, and there's a lot of dynamics in families that come up around experience this kind of hate and violence, right? And so, for example, for Asian partners in a mixed race relationship, there are some issues there. For example, an Asian or Pacific Islander person in a relationship with a white person. What are you seeing coming up that could be challenging in a partnership like that?
So what I am seeing in my couples coming in that are mixed race, or even in different healing circles that I've sat in, and people that I've spoken to, one of the difficult part that comes up within mixed relationship is that Asian Americans often or sometimes will have partner that finds it hard to really understand what's going on, right? It's really hard for them to really understand the fear, the concern, the anger, and the emotions that's coming up for their Asian American partner, right? Asian American partner, right? So, so that often leads to a disconnect, at the time when they're needing the connection the most, right? So that's what, some of what I've seen within couples that are in these relationships.
Yeah, so this could be a particularly challenging dynamic when you have one partner from the Asian American community and one who is white, and there's not this kind of sensitivity or awareness of what the partner is going through.
That's right.
Yeah,
Right.
but that could be an added challenge. There's already a lack of safety going out into the streets, and then to come home and not feel heard or understood can just add to whatever the emotional challenges are that that person is
Yeah.
experiencing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's been a struggle for the people that are in the mixed relationship that I've been hearing. Is really this sense of, my partner just, is not able to hear me and just doesn't get it, doesn't get what I'm going through.
Mhm.
Right. And that's deeply painful, because this is a time when they're looking for support, and to feel like your partner just doesn't get the pain that you're holding. It's very difficult.
Yeah, that's very difficult. And also too for adopted Asian children in say white families or families of a different race.
Mhm.
Um, could be a similar experience of not feeling understood.
Yes, I've heard from multiple adoptees, Asian adoptees for who have white parents, about their pain, that what happened in Atlanta happened, and nobody in the family reached out to see how they were doing
Mm.
as an Asian person. And this was deeply painful, that they were not, nobody reached out, nobody checked in on them to see how they were doing. No one's even talking about this, right?
Mhm.
And recently I heard from another adoptee who was felt, in a deep pain about the fact that she was adopted by white parents who never did their homework about the Asian culture, right? So now there's this, again, this disconnect. You're raised in this family where, you're loving your parents, right? Your adoptive parents, but when things, regarding Asian culture or, Asian attacks happen, no one's checking in to see how they're internalizing everything that's been going on. And that's been deeply painful. And there's a lot of anger.
A lot of anger about that, right? And the thing you said about doing your homework, this gets complicated because I think that I'm curious what you think about this, that, uh, say the white family of an adopted Asian child or the white partner of an Asian partner, they may say something like, I love you, I don't see you different.
Mhm.
And it may be like in their heart, they may be feeling that, but may not realize the hurt that that could bring, or the sense of dismissiveness that that could communicate, even though they have the sense that it's coming from a good place in their own heart when they say it.
Mhm. And they may have very good intentions, but to say that, oh no, we've adopted you, so you're one of us,
Right.
is taking away their individual, their individual characteristics as being an Asian. This is part of who they are, right? And then to not acknowledge that and sort of just say, well, you're one of us, when in fact, there is a rich background history to the Asian culture that is then being denied to the adoptee, right? And so when things like this happen, because that was the mentality, when things like this happen, when things like, what happened in Atlanta happen, it doesn't go through their mind that my child, is of Asian descent. And perhaps I should reach out and see how, he or she's internalizing this information, what's been going on.
Right, because to say that you're one of us is both loving and dismissive at the same time.
Mhm.
And so it's so important to not deny a whole part of who this person who's so important to you is.
Right.
because that can lead to more of a sense of isolation that you were talking about, fear, loneliness, depression.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
to, and I think that a lot of the anger is, what, are we not discussing the elephant in the room, right? That I'm Asian, this happened, and it's going to impact me, right? And to
That's,
dismiss it as if I am not one, I'm this not going to impact me. Well, how deeply painful is that to deny a part of my existence as an Asian person?
yes. And yeah, very so important. And to be, like to say, I'm an Asian person, that also comes with a whole history of norms and expectations um, that can negatively affect how a person could advocate for him or herself based
Mm-hmm.
on some of that history, thousands of years of history, perhaps, of expectations about how one behaves, how one asserts themselves, or communicates their needs. And so I wonder if you could speak to that, how that could maybe negatively impact how an Asian person or Pacific Islander could be impacted about getting their own needs met based on their own cultural norms and expectations.
Yeah. So to that end, the term model minority is a myth, right? That this model minority was a term that was originally created in the 60s to weaponize Asians against other minorities. I think in the 1960s, there were, the US was getting a lot of criticisms about their treatment of minorities, right? And so, they came up with, people came up with this term, model minority, by saying, well, what are you talking about? Look at how we're treating our minority. Look at this group of people that is thriving, right? Because they're just keeping quiet, keeping their heads low. They by working hard, that somehow you can get there too, because look at this model minority group of people who are doing that,
Mhm.
right? So and so that's a myth that just further, right, fuels the belief, right? And then many Asians bought into that, right? Like, if I can just keep quiet and just work hard, right, then I will get there. I will enjoy the same privileges as the white folks, right? Except we never get there because we're perpetually being seen, right, that as not from this country, right? The xenophobia runs high, but we're being used as this group of people that says no, but look, no, we have a success story here, so we are not mistreating our minorities.
Right. So that was sort of put onto Asian Americans, that model minority, right? And just keep quiet, keep your head down, and
Work hard, and then you too can enjoy the success and the success that this country has to offer.
right. And as if that wasn't hard enough to cope with, there's also norms and expectations from people's countries of origin where they may have grown up or have parents who grew up there that say perhaps that, and you can help me with this, that maybe women shouldn't be outspoken or have too loud a voice.
Mhm.
Um, and so expectations like that could make it harder to want to seek help, like to even think it's okay to seek help. I'm complaining. I'm not supposed to complain.
That's right. So, often, many Asians become they're anti-confrontational, right? They're quiet because it is about, like, if I just stay silent and quiet, right, then I can sort of, get by,
Mhm.
right, underneath, and not cause too much friction or trouble or cause the spotlight to be shined on me, right? Except there's a huge consequence
Right.
to doing that.
Yeah. Can you speak to that? Some of the consequences of having to silence your own voice, not yours per se, but one's own voice
Yes.
for cultural expectations or to be the model minority. that so that you don't have a voice about your own pain.
Yes. So often, as a result of this, many Asians become they apolitical, right? They don't get involved in politics. They stay quiet and silent, right? Because it's on the side of being it's how we stay safe, right? Many Asians internalize that as safety. This is how we stay safe, and then we can actually go on and do what we need to do, right? But then as a result of that, then we're being seen often as weak or subservient, right? Well, we're unable to advocate for ourselves, that we don't have a voice and we don't get seen, right? That it's okay, that somehow, even what happened in Atlanta, that, Asian women are disposable. If I have an issue, I'll blame it on, the Asian women because, they're being seen as, a scapegoat, right? For the issues that's going on. Somehow, that's the being hypersexualized, for Asian women being hypersexualized, as a way to, to be blamed for what's going on for people.
Yeah, I talk about blaming the victim here.
That's right. So
Yeah,
often we're scapegoated in that way, right? Because we stay silent and we don't speak up.
right. So here you have a person in great pain, hate and violence being directed at him or her, but society says, or cultural expectations say, stay quiet, um, don't speak out, don't assert yourself, and which means you only end up more alone in
Mm-hmm.
a painful place without a way to be heard or seen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's just a recipe for what? Depression,
Mm-hmm.
alcoholism.
Mm-hmm. People often suppress their emotions, right? There's a lot of, not really dealing with what's going on underneath them, right? And then as these things happen, when we're not speaking up, sometimes I think for the non-Asians, it's almost as if it's some way of saying that it's okay for us to get harassed, bullied, attacked, because you're not going to say anything. You're not going to speak up. So we can actually take out whatever that we're going through in our world on you.
Almost as right. It almost like it somehow invites it more. Like you're not complaining, so maybe you don't mind.
So maybe you're condoning that, right?
Condoning it. Yeah. Yeah.
And that is so not the case. But I think as more of these Asian attacks are happening, people are really realizing, right? Asian Americans are realizing, the people that I've spoken to, that I've seen, I've attended numerous, different events, activities, lectures, healing circles, and the things I'm hearing, right? Either, being, at a Asian women conference, or with Asian politicians, attended rallies. The things I'm hearing, right, is that because people are not understanding that there's a consequence to our silence, right? That we continue to be invisible. And maybe with the message that we are giving is that somehow we're condoning this, and it's not okay. Right?
It's not okay, right? There's consequence both internally for the person suffering who's going through it, and sort of to society at large, that somehow silence is complicit in condoning it.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so how can Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders begin to process, name their pain and begin to process it and convert this pain into action?
Yeah, so I think, some of the important things that for the Asian American communities, that they can do to deal with feelings that's coming up is first identify what those feelings are. What is it that you are sitting with? Can we identify what they are? Is it, are you sitting with sadness? Are you sitting with anger? What is really coming up for you? And so often people are holding inside and not really giving us space to that feeling, right? So first thing is be able to make some space for us to feel and know that it's okay for you to feel whatever it is that you're feeling,
This
right?
is so important what you're saying, Peggy. It's like start by inviting your own feelings.
Mhm.
Give yourself permission to invite your own feelings.
Mhm.
and to notice them for yourself.
Right.
How will you be able to talk about them to someone who wants to hear them,
Mhm.
not giving yourself permission
Yeah.
to name
Make
them?
space, right?
Make
Make
space.
space for the emotion, right? And let yourself accept that, it is okay that you are feeling whatever it is that you're feeling, right? And you're feeling that for a reason. By first identifying it, right? Well, then, it invite us to really further understand where that's coming from, right? Perhaps these are, you've had experiences that's been really deeply painful, right? Maybe we can acknowledge some of that, what you're sitting with, as opposed to saying they don't exist. But, the things that we push back that we don't acknowledge is what often leads to our anxiety and depression. So can we make space for that? Take a look at it, right? And once we understand what that is, okay, can we understand, can we process those emotions, right? So you're angry about what's happened, what's going on in the world around you, right? In your community, okay? What is it that you're angry about? Can we connect to that? Can we try to make sense of what is the anger about? What is the sadness about? Okay, you're really sad about these things happening. Okay, so we want to help people connect to their feelings and process them. Once you process that, right, then we want to say, well, what is this thing? What is this energy you have inside of you? What is it if you really check in with it? What does it really want to do? That would help you to get out of this space. Okay, for some people, it's, maybe it's going to the gym. I need to get this out of my body, right? Maybe it's, finding a healing circle. I need to band with people who are hurting just like me. Maybe, it's, to heal my pain, my sadness around that. Maybe it's to join a rally, right? Maybe it's to organize a rally, right? Because I'm really angry and I'm not going to sit back and do nothing. Maybe I want to do something about it. Can we understand what it is that we're sitting with, the feelings that we're sitting with, process that, and then find out what does this energy want to do? That will be the most helpful for you, so that you're not sitting in this place alone by yourself, feeling helpless and hopeless, right? That you can feel that you can do something about your feelings and this energy that you're sitting with. And only when we have these bunch of, actions, right? When we have the actions, then can we make, really lasting change. That's the hope anyway, right?
Right. That's the hope. Right. And, when you said, so you're not sitting alone in this pain, that is perhaps one of the most important messages. It's all important, but, when you're not, it's because you're inviting people to first be with their own pain inside. So don't leave yourself alone from yourself. And then give yourself permission and space to do that. But also, you don't have to be alone. Like, you can find ways, healing circles, um, rallies, therapy with a sensitive therapist who can acknowledge your pain and understand you. So you don't have to be alone. It's such a powerful message.
Yes. There are a lot of resources, that people can reach out to,
Mhm.
right? So that they don't have to feel like they have to deal with this by themselves.
Yeah. Any come to mind? We can also post, links to resources on the homepage of NYCEFT when this gets posted.
Mhm.
Um, so, any come to mind off the bat, or we can just leave it to posting?
Yes, no, I have a couple. So, people can, for Asian Americans, they can reach out to the Asian American Federation. What they do is that they offer resources to raise the influence and well-being of Asian Americans. Um, and so they deal with things like, immigration, integration, mental health, economic development, civic engagement, those type of, in areas to help support the Asian American community, right? They have lots of different resources in there. So, you can go in for the Asian American community, they can go in there and find what they need. In terms of other resources, right? There's the New York City Well. So that's a 24/7 mental health support site that, for people who are dealing with, anxiety, depression, or things that's very difficult to sit with. They have that 24/7 supportive service. So you can reach out to them. And then lastly, iHollaback is a site where it deals with it helps people deal with harassment. Okay, find ways to deal with harassment, as well as offer bystander intervention training, so that people can go in there to learn what to do if you've been the victim of attack, or if you are worried about being harassed. There are lots of tips on what you can do, as well as people who want to help. Certainly a bunch of people that I know have signed up for their training to become a bystander intervention a trained person, so that you don't feel like you're helpless when you're watching attacks happening in front of you and not know what to do. So these are just a couple of resources.
Right. Thank you, Peggy. We will post those on the homepage of NYCEFT in the description of this episode, so people can find them there. So that sort of now brings me to, I'm thinking about what therapists need to be aware of. And I'm working with a Chinese couple,
Mhm.
and they both have their individual therapists, and they're working with me. And I asked them after the shooting in Georgia, the mass shooting in Georgia, uh, I asked them, how has this been for them? Have they been feeling afraid? Is that something they'd like to talk about? And the wife said to me, she paused for a moment and she said to me, I've been in individual therapy for a year with this therapist, and she hasn't asked me how I'm feeling about this. She said, you're the first to ask me. And I said, wow, maybe we need to be more aware of this as practitioners, that we need to ask.
Yes, certainly, reach out with cultural sensitivity, right? That things are happening for the Asian community, and just checking in to see how people are taking information in. What is it that they're sitting with, right? As therapists, right? We can certainly reach out and try to help the Asian American community, really trying to, or our Asian clients to come in trying to process emotions that they're sitting with, right? And just to check in.
Mhm.
And then let them tell us, okay, what's going on for them. Um, the other thing is, when I talk about the cultural sensitivity part, right, to really do our research as therapists, right, as we're dealing with Asian clients, just have some familiarity with their cultural upbringing, right? What does that mean to grow up in an Asian household? What does that mean for them, right? What are some of the things that they're growing up with that's important to them? So we want to be sensitive to some of the cultural upbringing background that our clients are coming in with.
Yeah, and that's where we need to do the work as therapists, right? Particularly therapists who are not part of the Asian uh, American community or the Pacific Islander community. We need to do our own work so we can be culturally sensitive.
Mhm. Right. Don't make assumptions that, that they're a certain way, right? And also, because I mentioned that, Asians is not a monolith, right? People may have different things that are important to them in terms of their cultural background, right? So, so we want to really just be sensitive to their needs and what they've experienced in their lives.
Yeah, and one way as therapists we can be sensitive, because we can't know everything about every culture. We
Mhm,
can be open to
mhm,
asking and say, can you help me?
mhm,
Uh, Forgive me, I don't know about this part of your culture, but I'm curious to know
mhm.
how this may impact you here. Um, but I think the most important thing is to be willing to ask.
Be open and curious, and so that it'll make it easier for your Asian clients to come and have an open conversation with you, right?
Yeah.
And to your credit, Jeff, to be able to reach out to them and acknowledge this is something that would impact Asian clients, your Asian clients, right? It
Mhm.
is tremendous that we're not just leaving this, unspoken. I just recently had a new couple come in where the husband is Asian and the wife is a Caucasian, is white woman. And so when they came in, I asked, I said, I just wanted to, point this out, right? I mean, want to make space for the fact that I notice you are from two different cultural background, right? And so please feel free to, if anything, any cultural issues that come up, right? Please, I want to make space for that. Just wanted to at least acknowledge that. And they were appreciative
Yeah.
of that, right? As opposed to we're just not going to talk about that.
Right. Yeah. We have to talk about it. We have to make space,
Right.
and we have to do our own work to be able to do that.
And we're just being inviting by saying, I want to make space for that. We're not saying you have to talk about it if they don't want to talk about it, or you have to talk about it. Just saying that I just wanted to acknowledge that I do understand that you coming from two different cultural backgrounds. I want to make space for that, for whatever comes up that you would like to work on.
Right. To offer that invitation. Yeah. And so here we are, Peggy, talking about all this, and I imagine you've had your own personal experiences in dealing with this. As a practitioner, you have to hold both your own pain to be able to be there for your client's pain. How has this been for you?
It's certainly been a journey. Been processing certainly my own issues too, that I've been holding on to, my own feelings, of pain and discomfort, sadness mixed with, anger. It's difficult. I'll just say, it's difficult even when I do go out for walks, for my husband to say to me, oh, make sure you put on a baseball cap, sunglasses, and mask so nobody can see your ethnic identity.
Wow.
And that really brings up in me this sense, of I can hear my love, the worry tone in my loved one's voice. But part of me, that gets angry about, why is it that I have to live this way
Mhm.
in order to feel safe? And why do I have to worry about going out for a walk? Like, I should not have to worry about these things yet, and yet this is reality, right?
The injustice of this reality.
The injustice of it all. Yeah.
Yeah. It may help listeners, to know how you cope, you know, um, maybe in your own therapy or listening circles or any of the suggestions you gave earlier.
Mhm. I would say definitely, from just even what I've heard from other people, right? In the multiple healing circles that I've sat in, there's this overwhelming sense of feeling like they're alone. They're alone in this. And so I would say, for the Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders out there, to please reach out and find a community, find connection, because that's really important, that to know that you don't have to sit in this alone by yourself. There are communities, there are healing circles, there are lots of support groups, there are certainly people putting together anti-Asian racism workshops. If you have to feel connected with your religious group, please feel free to do that. Whatever it is that you need to do, if you need to call a hotline, if you need to reach out to a therapist, lots of resources out there, right? So that you don't have to do this alone. You are not alone in this. And this is what I really want to let the Asian community know, is that you don't have to be alone in this, and you are not alone in what you are feeling.
Right. Thank you for that, Peggy. I really so appreciate you being here today. We covered quite a bit, and I think it's all so important. I'm grateful for you coming on here and sharing your wisdom and your advice. And is there anything else you'd like to add before we close?
Yeah, just, in addition to just even speaking to, the Asian community, right? Where, you can, reach out so that to not sit with the feelings alone, process, get some, if you need some assistance to help you process some emotions that it's out there for really our non-Asian friends out there, right? Please check in. I mean, you don't have to say, you don't have to badger anybody or anything like that, right? But please, by all means, reach out and check in with your Asian friends and family, right? See how they're doing. See how they're coping with anything, right? Listen to them, right? There have been, so many Asians have been feeling, so unseen, invisible, unheard, not understood for so long that it's a really great thing if you can reach out and give them the space to hear what they have to say, right? Just
Yeah.
to make space, not, just to reach out and make space.
And what would you say to non-Asian people who might think, well, I don't want to bring up a difficult topic for that person and make them more upset. If they want to talk to me, they'll bring it up.
So I would say that, it's okay to put yourself out there and say, even if you want to say, I really don't know what to say, but I just want to let you know that I'm here. If you need to talk, I'm here, right? To just even offer that out there. I get that the hesitancy of not wanting to say that, maybe in the fear of, I don't want to put pressure, right? But you can put that out there and be transparent, right? It's not that they have to do anything or you have to do anything. You can even simply just let people know that you're here. I'm here if you need me.
Right.
If the space is, I don't know what to say, it's okay to say that. This is a lot. It's a lot going on. You might be going through stuff. I just want to let you know that I'm here. I'm here for you.
Right. Because that invitation is what's so important. We're not trying to force anybody to say anything, but it's the invitation that lets a person know, I see you, I care,
Mhm.
and I'm here for you in whatever way could be best.
Right. I'm here to listen to you, if you need a ear.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that, Peggy. So appreciative once again. Um, yeah, this is going to be very important for people to hear. I'm looking forward to getting it posted. And thank you so much for your time and your wisdom.
Thank you so much, Jeff, again, for giving me this platform to talk about some of the things that's been going on in the Asian American Pacific Islander community and really giving me a space to, I think, to voice some of my own feelings about what's going on, because it's certainly been difficult. And it's been a time of awakening for many Asians as you're coming into dealing with maybe emotions that they put away for a very long time to now having to be confronted, right? Because often they feel that sense of threat now, the safety, and because this increase in, attacks and anti-Asian attacks and crimes, that people are no longer able to sit back and put those feelings away, that they're coming to sort of this new awakening. So it is even more crucial for us as therapists to be there and to make space for, our Asian clients. So thank you
Fantastic.
for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And you can find this episode on the homepage of the NYCEFT website. That's nyceft.org. And we'll be back with future episodes.